fuck it. We're just gonna go live on. We're gonna go live on Facebook. All right. So, I have no clue why I'm doing this episode, but it sounds like a lot of fun. And well, actually, I do have a lot of understanding why I'm doing this episode. I seen somebody I work with today, and we had a little bit of a meeting, and she said something about cannibalism. Like, well, then cannibalism must exist in the Bible and must be real, right? And I said, well, on so many more levels than you can actually anticipate. And I believe Jesus was trying to get this across. But when having B and C rated students who want their own power, as thusly like was denoted by Jesus on so many occasions to his apostles and other followers, that the only reason why you're following me is for such and such, so I'm going to have to knock them a grade for that. But he, I believe, was trying to attempt to show you a cascading reason why there is already the notion of the immortal self, the immortal living self. So there's like the immortal living self, which is like this concept right here. Okay, so I'm going to put the immortal living self. Immortal living self, the ILS, right? And everything's going to look backwards, so you're going to have to write this down and then like look at it at a mirror or something. I don't know how to change my cameras right now, and I don't know how to do them from another perspective. So you have the immortal living self concept, right? And then you have the self concept, right? And the immortal living self and self are actually like intertwined. So they make like, if you want, you can make like a little design that looks like the rotation of Earth around the sun or something. And then you have the afterlife living self. And and I'm just going to go into scientifically proven concepts of this. So you have the immortal living self and the afterlife living self, right? The immortal afterlife in scientific terms. Now, I'm not going to add in the concept of the spirit or any of that, okay, but just some other concepts to which I believe Jesus was trying to get people to understand, and they either overlooked it or just cared not to share it with everybody else. So like the immortal living self, like what if you could be like more aspiring and godly like, or more Jesus like, if you could understand that there is a concept of immortal living self, and you may be able to tap into that. So what the fuck do you mean, Kevin? All right, the immortal living self. All right, so let's say that yourself, so right here's you as well. The immortal living self is you. Clip your toenails, right? Toenails. And cut your hair. Skin cells. Pee. And we'll go poop. Okay? Just those 4 concepts right there. Those are kind of 4 gross ones, and I kind of like using this because those are awesome. Let's say each one of these 4 concepts then produces life. Like, so let's say you have like bacteria that turn into life. I don't know how to spell it right. Bacteria that turn into life. Let's say like a snail eats it, right, and produces babies, right? Babies, right? Because that's where the immortal part is, right? Because you are what you eat, right? Because remember, you are what you eat. So you are what you eat? And what if what you eat eats you first? So now you have like bacteria, skin cells, snails. You have like maybe a rabbit eats on something that you leave. Who knows, right? Maybe a fox. Somehow a bear gets in there, right? And so let's say though that it's not you that in turn eats one of these things. So we'll just put life. Life, because bacteria is in life. Life eats your living existence. Right. Wow. Now that's life eats your living existence. Okay. And you can add whatever other animals or whatever other concepts that your mind can wrap its head around that may consume your living essence. So you're still alive, right? While other life is like procreating and becoming prosperous because it lives off of your living life, right? So we're not even talking about like you're dead yet. This is just your eternal life, living life. Like you're into all of this, right? And let's say like, you eat it, right? So like at some point there's going to be like, we've got a little all-encompassing symbol there. And we'll slide over here. And let's say you, Joe, Betty, oh fuck it, the town. Well, at this point, though really it'd be the world, right? Eats off of your living soul. So all of this is, and this happens for everybody. So right, everybody's eating off of everybody's living nature, livingness. It's a part of what happens. Just like we're like living off of shit we breathe in that other animals put off. Like if you have mice put off a smell off their dander that causes asthma. So you're living off da 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 da. So any of this eats off of any of you, and then you, Joe or Betty, or the town or the rest of the world eat off of any of that life, whether it be a tree. Maybe you took a pee in a tree, so you got a tree up here. Now look at this. You got living life in a tree that you took a pee in, right? There's little squirrels that live in here. And then like you got like coons that live in there. Put that little coon dude right here. I don't know how to draw a coon, so he's gonna look like a warrior with a helmet and some black eyes. And kind of a black muzzle. Look, he looks like a skull. Okay, great job. And they eat, the berries, and they eat the pine cones and shit. So you got like the little berries that are produced. You got a little berry here and a little berry there. Maybe they're eating the pine cone. You know what I mean? And you got the pine cone going here. Let's say somebody eats the raccoon or the squirrel. So on in life. Hell, maybe it's the deer that eat the I'm gonna chop up this poor deer. I'm gonna do him a horrible job. My little stick figure horsey deer. Alright, fuck it. I haven't drawn in a long time. And it's a small picture. And the deer eats the berries, or the pine cone, or the green niblets of spring growth that come off the pines. Sometimes they eat those because those are really healthy for them. But it's your pee that's in that tree, right? So you are what you eat, right? The tree eats off of the fluid that you left, if you left enough, So pee well. And then, and then, and then, the nice tall grass, that's there that they like to eat on, and various other berries and shit. Pee well, pee well. The deer eats that, right? And so, like, again, if you do certain testings, right? So if you take this to, like, a science level, like, you can see where human genetics are left encoded in fruit and so forth, and animal and human, and da-da-da-da-da-da. So, like, if you wanted to do the same research that I have done that verifies, like, stuff that's in the Bible, like, this is a simple aspect of cannibalism, right? This is what is called perpetual cannibalism, right? So once anything dies and is fed back to the earth and turned into soil in any way, shape, or form, even if it is, like, your living soul, so, like, stuff that comes off your body that is encoded with, like, who you are, right? Now, oh, what do you mean my living soul? Well, your living self, okay? I'm sorry. Your living self, because your soul is still alive, like, when this is all transpiring to create new life. So it's like, part of your eternal living life. Like, so you are helping create all this new life off your life. So you are shot by Joe or Betty as the deer that ate the berries off the tree and the grass in the field and fed his family, right? So there's, like, a form of cannibalism right there, right? So it's kind of funny and unique, like, and this has been happening in this form for as long as Adam and Eve and all of that. I'm pretty sure, like, you would probably consider Adam and Eve the first to leave, their living self somewhere, especially during giving birth to these two individuals called Cain and Abel. There are other people and other stories that you could go with that really make a lot of sense if they are the ones that you aspire to being the firsts. And if you want to go with, like, any animal that died prior to it that created something ate was already cannibalistic. So, like, there's that concept. So, you are what you eat. So you're, one, already eating yourself, and two, already eating others. That's pretty realistic if you do the science about it. I mean, hell, when you flush the toilet after taking a poop, your toilet actually spins the poo molecule 6 foot around. So if your bathroom is less than 6 feet, trust me, you just douse yourself with your own shit. So, there is the eternal living self that goes anywhere and everywhere just off your living self. And that's not even atomically. So we're not even getting into the atoms that pass through one another or other things. And then there is, like, this afterlife living self. And that's something, like, a big portion of this, big portion of this has stopped for many years now. And they claim it's from, like, cultures like Egypt, I don't even know how to, Egypt, E-G-Y-P-T? I probably screwed that up. Egypt and Britain, there is a lot of influence there from it. But in America, the USA, we do it because of latent crime. We embalm, and oh, look, see, I gotta go all the way up here for this camera. Oh, sorry, camera. Embalm, I guess so. But a big portion of this has stopped, and I have, like, some curiosity about this in my own beliefs. Here, I'm gonna flip pages here because this is an interesting one. You have the reincarnation and the living self, right? So that Let me see. What did we call that again? The ILS. The ILS is also the living reincarnated, how you spell it, incarnated, horrible spelling, reincarnated self. So living reincarnated self, right? If you could understand this concept that Jesus may have been trying to explain, you may be able to do a lot of different shit. You may be able to be in two places at once. Yeah, ultimately. And you may be able to fly like Superman. Honestly. Or like Aladdin on a carpet. But that's just one thing. So, but let's take a break from that one. Okay, so we'll set that on to the side because there's so much more I could tell you about that I really believe Jesus was so desperately trying to get BNC students to understand. But here's one that I think a lot of people need help with. So, for many years, the world either buried its dead or left it. Okay? So you buried or left. You're dead. Okay? And Jesus talks about this. No, God, Kevin, why are you talking about Jesus so much? Because I love my bro. So, buried or left the dead, right? Jesus talks about this. Says, Jesus says, leave the dead or dying for the dead to deal with. Okay, so, well, that's interesting, right? Because now we put everybody in an embalmed concrete casket. Forever frozen in time. Okay. Now, this kind of goes against the establishment of God, and I think if you understand this part of it too, it's pretty interesting, because God says, from dust to dust. Simple, shorthand. That's shorthand, okay? So, pretty simple concept right there, right? Now, how does that work scientifically? All right, so if you're not embalmed, right? If this process right here, if this embalming does not happen, your body will break down. And it's horrific as it happens, you'll feed the earth. Okay. Now, there is something that I've seen it in a lot of different things, but here's a concept that so if you are supposed to be a part of what feeds the earth, right, and helps encode the next generation of food. So your body, your dead body, encodes the next generation of earthly food source fuel. F-U-E-L. F-E-F-E-U-L. F-E-F-U-E-L. Told you I can't spell, right? Well, that's like a kind of a weird concept, right? Okay, so like, what would have happened if, as was done like for in many places, I don't know, modernization, at times, bodies used to be buried, they were either burnt or buried, buried in food fields, to replenish the needs of the soil. Now they would literally break down, so they would break down bodies and do this, like, it's ancient times. This is before, like, for some reason we decided to put everybody in coffins and freeze them in time. And there's other things. So there's another thing about, and this is like found all over the place. A lot of people don't like to talk about it because you can find it in the Bible, you could find it in historical documents, you can Google this stuff. There's arguments both sides because people end up having like this, like, oh, it makes us look bad because our ancestors did such and such or whatever is in such and such our DNA and so forth. But there's this concept, okay, of the dead. Ooh, here. Oh, I need to change the page again. So this is still the afterlife, living self that we're talking about here. So like, and we're not talking about the soul. That's the great thing, is we're not making any claims to the soul. Okay, we're just making claims to the body and what the body used to do. So like, a body that died, right, for whatever reason. Oh, frowny face, I'm dead now, right? At times would feed outside of putting them in the cultivation fields when that came about. Would feed the living members. So, they'd be like mouths open, eyes open. Oh, free food, right? We don't have to go scavenge for berries. So they'd run up on this dead body and eat them, right? They eat this guy, and then somehow these people, X's and O's make more X's and O's, just little ones, right? So the food that fed the people, that was encoded into their DNA and RNA and what's even below that on an even scale that we have yet to think we can delve into when we're still trying to figure out DNA. We think we have it all sequenced, and if so, then they're going to try and make fake humans, but there's still a level below that, I can tell you that. It's not that simple. Not in the suggested amount of time that we've been alive. Even if you want to go with the millions of years, concept. But but we do know that we can find evidence that retains you are what you eat. So like, if you're from a certain area of the world, and you eat X soil is going to be in such person, and if you eat 1-2 soil, then 1-2 soil is going to be in said person. So we know that. So that's easy, right? And thusly, like, whatever said soil is in said animal, and if you eat said animal or fruits or drink water of whatever is in that general area, and generally, if you have hair and you have other means of like specifying and retaining things that you may have done throughout your life. It may show evidence of such things too. But what and how does this cannibalism even make sense? Well, one guy's theory, and it totally makes sense to me too, is why would you have a very specific set of teeth that are like more designed to eating humans, right, than it is designed for eating animals. Like, our teeth design is actually better for capturing human arm and flesh and so forth than it is capturing a deer or a bear or a rabbit or whatever. Like, if you were to think of the size of the mouth and the size of your teeth and so forth and their structure, that you would actually come to realize that it captures a human arm or leg or area of the human body much more befitting than it does other living species on this planet. And most mammals and non-mammals are actually quite prone to cannibalism as well. So it's not something that's so far-fetched. So there's this concept. Either you're feeding the earth, or you are feeding, you got earth, or living things. So we'll put things in there, if not humans. Okay. So two of these vast things that used to happen on Earth that like helped the evolution of Earth to where it is now have also stopped. So, well, not entirely. There are places on Earth that still do it. So, cannibalism, and I'm talking about cannibalism and not like tribal. I mean, other forms of cannibalism still exist, which isn't far-fetched. It is far-fetched. You got tribal, you have cultural, you have battle, you have curiosity, shit. There's more than just that. I mean, there's all kinds of like cannibalism that exists today. I could probably list off like 25 or more forms of cannibalism that exist today, but I'm not gonna get into that because like that's just kind of one type of immortal after death. Like, you're still immortal after death. Like, because like, if you are in the DNA of like, so like, the food goes in the hole, right? There's a big hole with some teeth in it. Like, my drawing is freaking horrible, you guys, but I had this really great conversation, and it brought up, it was like, I have so many other questions of faith I want to ask you, and then I got onto a rant about all of this and forgot to talk to her about what she wanted. But it made me want to make this video. So like, you're the food going in. Like, you're the leg bone, right? Going in. And so you go inside this dude's fucking monstrous mouth, right? And we're gonna like give him some big old nostrils here. Some big old nostrils, right? Hoovered. This guy is hungry, right? There you go. He's hoovering you in, right? And then he builds, kids, like X and zeros. Like, let's say, I don't know, 2 days later, right? 2 days later. So he builds X's and zeros. So he has boys and girls both, right? So the food that he ate at this time, right, is now in your DNA, right? So it's in your DNA. And let's say like he shat this DNA out as well. So he's got some boo-boos. Woo, we got some boo-boos. I'm not even going to try and draw the emoji because these are going to be like ghostly looking emojis. Boo-boos. Like these are ghastly boo-boos. Right? Because this is like, what the fuck? Holy shit. So this guy poops out your DNA. Your DNA. Right? And it's in a different form now, but it's still there. Right? And this then creates like a fruit tree. Right? Like horrible fruit tree. I don't care. Right? And you got like Johnny Apple over here. Johnny Apple's over here. And them Johnny Apples, man. Them Johnny Apples, they're ate by a deer. No, fuck it. This time, they're ate by, who knows? Like, they're ate by one's a deer, one's a bear, and one's a wildcat, right? One's another human. Right, so humans already ate your DNA, like it's Apple DNA. It's Apple DNA, right? Apple DNA. So like you just ate like Joe's Apple DNA because this like nice little leg piece here was Joe's, and he lost his leg to Ralph, right? And 2 days later he had like Betty. And then Joe 2, and then Sam, we'll call her Sammy, and then we'll have Joe 3, because this guy's just like into doing some stuff like that. And so like, Betty, Joe 2, Sammy, and Joe 3 all got Joe's original DNA in them as well from Ralph. So it's the Ralphie mom. We don't know who mom is yet. Joe DNA complex at this point. And again, like I said, we got Joe DNA pooped out. Joe DNA pooped out and grew into Joe Apple Tree. Joe Apple Tree, right? And Joe Apple Tree turned into Joe Deer. And Joe Bear. And Joe Wildcat, right? And then you got Joe Apple Human. Joe Apple human DNA now, so you got like Joe Apple human. So that guy turned into Joe Apple human, which is kind of funny because like that then only took like 1, 2, a poop, a tree, and then back to him. So that's 1, 2, poop, and a tree. So that's 4. So in 4 moves, Joe is now back in a human. Is back in a human body. To say the least. So, you got Joe Apple human, right? And then, so, you still got the deer, the bear, and the wildcat, right? And who knows what happens to their destiny or how far along, but at some point a human eats the remnants of it. So, human eats the remnants of it. And I mean, I could be, let's give him a little story. So, human eats the remnants of the 3. Doesn't that sound sadistic? Human eats the remnants of the 3. So, that'd be a great story. The 3 that creepeth among the earth. with Joe Ralph apples. Because at that point they're actually Joe Ralph apples. So that I didn't want to have to try and explain that. I was hoping somebody else would catch that and throw a comment in the comment section somewhere. So you have the Joe Ralph apples, right? Human eats the remnants of the 3 that creepeth among the earth with the Joe Ralph apples DNA. So let's say that the deer Well, let's say the deer was dumb and it got dumped by a wolf. Um, wolf just grabbed it, had its way with it, realized he couldn't give it some offspring. No wolf feed deer offspring, so no wolf feed deer offspring. And so he ate the fucker. Right? Alright, so there you go. And so the wolf is now like 5th generation DNA of this human. I totally went South Park on that. So, and then like at this point, like, Cedric the Impaler or whatever decides that the wolf's gotta go. Wolf's gotta go. Like, it's trying to hump everything. It's got humpitis. It's got humpitis. So either they gotta either like find something for the wolf to hump, or the wolf's gotta go. But at this point, Cedric is contemplating what's gonna happen to the wolf. Is the wolf gonna keep the DNA, or does the wolf gotta just go back to the earth? At that point, then the earth now becomes the 6th. If not, we haven't changed the page there. So, new page is needed. There's just a little notation. Look at this whole drawing board. This is just at hand here, right? So we're gonna say like the deer's been 86th in the 5th marker. So Joe Deere he made it into the 5th place. You're hoping to make it into the last place, I guess. Maybe not, because then it just means that you're that much farther in this before you hit the earth again, right? And then have to be reborn into human somehow, some way. So we haven't even gotten to that yet. So that's a whole nother concept, because 2 or 4 of them were born right here. So we still have like the history and lineage of the Ralphie, Betty Joe, Sammy Joe. So these people are an afterthought. Like, this is a huge afterthought to think of. Like, what happened with those guys that like were born under the consumption of Joe's DNA, right? Because trust me, this all happened at some point. Maybe not in an exact way, but this is, if you do your history well enough and understand your science of things, this has all happened in some way. So we have Bearman. Bearman, dude. Bearman was cool. Bearman, he got to like go teach the Indian tribes some stuff, right? And I don't know if I'm gonna be doing justice to my friend or not, but Bear guy, he's gonna go like, he's gonna walk among the Indians, and he's gonna have like, Joe Bear DNA. So like Joe Bear DNA gives him a 1-up. So he's over here walking with Joe Bear. So Joe Bear, and Joe Bear has cubs, right? Cubs. And this is a cool thing. Like, when you pass down lineage and DNA and stuff, like, your DNA, your lineage is smarter than you. So, like, now we got Joe Cubs, right? Joe Cubs. Because the DNA, some of which they consumed and which helped make Joe Bear smarter and cooler, got passed down to his cubs, right? So, like, eventually, like, Joe Cubs could probably be, like, using, like, the internet faster than your kid, but do you realize how much faster they can use shit than you can? And you don't even have to teach them how to do it. They're just coming to you, telling you how to do something that you should have had 20 years experience figuring out how to do, right? That does happen very much. And so, like, you think about that concept, and, animals who have been here longer than us probably understand this far better than we do, but anyways, so, you got Joe Bear Cubs, and Joe Bear Cubs is kicking in with the Indians, and so, like, some of this truth and knowledge is, like, passed along down to them, and so, like, because, like, at some point, the Indians needed to eat, and Joe Bear Cub was now Joe the, I don't know, awesome, right? He's gonna be Joe Awesome, because he's gonna decide to, like, lay down his life. He's gonna, like, get in front of, like, this Indian's, like, bow, and, like, this Indian, he was going to, like, draw his bow, and I'm going to do a horrible justice picture on a bow here with a drawn arrow. Is going to be pointed right at this Joe Awesome, who's got this like hungry Indian family, and he's like spirit worlding up with this bear, and they can communicate on a level that is just profoundly spiritual, because Joe Bear's already had a few generations of human DNA in him, and he's passed it down to his cubs. So like innately they can kind of communicate in the spiritual level, soul to soul, if you will. And so Mr. Indian dude fucking zeroes in on Joe Awesome, who's like, bro, feed your family, right? So now you have like Joe Bear Indians, right? And this process just like repeats for the dawn of time to some degree. I think like the dawn of time. And if you want to talk about like the first one that I know of to die, and well, not necessarily, because I would actually have to do some research to state whether this is factually true or not, but the most accepted and sold copy of the first person to ever die, hold on a second here, I forgot to write this down, dawn of time, was to be Abel. Abel was the first one to die, and his blood went back and fed the soil, right? Because it's talked about biblically, right? So like there's the first human, Abel, first human to be fed back to earth, and thusly, by that concept, by the scientific concept, he's also the first person to be cannibalized. This is not like, this is regardless as to whether or not any animal had ate Abel and then human fed off of it at some point. This is just for the fact that like it speaks of how Abel's blood cried out from the soil, of which was in the field of where they ate their food from, and so like you eat, so Abel's dead. There's a little picture of Abel dead, right? He's dead. His blood is trickling out. Blood is trickling out, into the soil. You have these crops out in the soil, and these farmers gotta come back later with their equipment. There's a little rake, I guess. I don't know. There's a little rake, and they're gonna have to like rake all this up and then eat it later, right? And so like, you have siblings at some point, or lineage or heritage or something, or produce offspring or grow more crops on this, or however. Hell, maybe they just tilled his body underneath afterwards. It doesn't necessarily say what they did to Abel's body, but at this point the cannibalism begins, and it has perpetually been that way ever since, if there was any lineage produced off of the lifeblood of Abel pouring out into the field, and or any animal that may have come across and ate Abel's remains, that then any person who was alive at that time ate, or at some point any time down the future. Okay, because again, we're talking about like the Joe Bear and Joe Bear cubs. You know, if you go back to think about Joe Bear cubs, you know, and let's say a woolly mammoth or something, or saber-tooth tiger, I don't fucking know, Abel, and had offspring, well then they've been carrying, you know, Abel's DNA since the dawn of time. How exactly you'd find it, I'm not entirely sure, but I know that there's some sort of codex that traces the consumption and what you were built from like the very first thing that you consume orally and so forth. So I don't remember what it's called, but that's farther than I really wanted to go into, like a random live conversation on this subject before I really forgot about it, because I didn't know how much interest there'd really be in this. But like, you know, Jesus tries to tell you that you're immortal on so many levels. And just think, like, what if you could, like, really tap into the concept of the living and dead immortal self, like, outside of the soul? You know, just the fact that your specific Wi-Fi code, your, if you will, your specific key code is everywhere. And let's say that you have access to this specific key code everywhere that it is, right? And this is something that's also acknowledged, like, in a sense, and this is why, like, people are told to be leery of, like, who you have as sexual partners, because once you are intimate with somebody, you are essentially married to them. So, like, you have given your key code, like, a back door. Their genetic is like a back door to your key code in a certain sense of being able to reach out to you. So, you know, if you have somebody who wants to haunt you, well, they can haunt you on many levels, I guess. But the other concept is like, if you have left yourself somewhere and something has grown of yourself somewhere, and you need to access that place or self or something or information, you can, like, roll into this, like, Wi-Fi genetic key code and, like, access it. Like, it would give you, like, the ability to, like, I don't know if you believe in this type of stuff, but, you know, if you were to think about it in this way, it might make sense to you, like how Jesus could levitate, how Jesus could travel, 200 miles in what seemed to be minutes or, hours without a plane or a car or a really fast fucking horse. It could also explain to you how he could speak to you on levels and places, or gods or demons or ancestors or old pets, or, like, there's a lot of history about, like, the lingering of, like, yourself or other self amongst you or you amongst them, and to be cautious of such things. And, like, so much is, like, voodoo hair follicles, and there's a lot out there that is all attached to the same concept of the living and dead immortal self outside of the soul, and how your specific code can give access to that immortal living or dead self. And there is the immortal living self and the immortal dead self. It just depends, like, were your cells still alive? Was, like, the flesh of your body still alive at the time it was consumed, or were they dead cells? Are you da-da-da-da-da-da-da? So it's like, it just depends on what level that you're feeding the earth. But, one concept that I said that is really negating is the ultimate dead, self, the one where you have no more technical living breath in the body of which you are currently entertaining. So, like, you have not gone back to feed the earth because you were embalmed and stuffed in a concrete casket and to be forever frozen in time, and or are not being cannibalized, which you are still being cannibalized in many other forms. But again, how far and how long do we want to get into this discussion? So, like, does cannibalism exist? Ultimately, yes, in a gazillion forms, if you're willing to accept science of both the living and afterlife self. And then there is, the cannibalism that is like what has been perpetually going on for all of existence since the birth of man. Because if you go back and you feed the soil and you've ate anything of the earth from that point on, then you are eating the remnants of something. So like if you buried your grandmother in the orchard and you decided to go pick the fruit of the orchard, then you just ate grandma orchard. It kind of goes back to this little drawing here of Abel being killed in the field. If you ate off the field, so it's like there's this some people are very adamant that the life that grows off of that is not directly affected by the means of mankind. So like for instance, like Indians are very adamant that you do not trespass on spiritual death grounds. And I believe a lot of that, in my understanding, is because mankind tramples new life. So, like, for instance, if your ancestors are producing new life, and in hopes that helps flourish everything around you, the trees, the birds, that's a fucking horrible picture of a bird. Wow, that was crazy. So yeah, the new birds, the fox, the weasel, the whatever, right? You got I can't draw nothing tonight. Oh my gosh. Alright, whatever. Whatever your ancestors are producing new life, right? So whatever that is, trees, animals, insects. Insects are crazy because they're everywhere, right? There's enough ants on this planet, right? There's enough ants on this planet, right, to take over the freaking world in 2 hours, right? And them ancestors have been eating on your DNA for all eternity, man. They're like one of the oldest fucking things on this planet. So they've got a lot to say about all the history if you could really ask them. So like, you got Indians saying, please no trespass spiritual deathlands, because mankind tramples on new life, and that new life is being created and fed by our decomposing ancestors, right, of one form or another. And after a while, like, they'll change their grounds. Like, I know some are like, sure, I'm not even gonna get into that, but I know that this is a really interesting, hopefully easy understandable for those that have no familiarity with the concept to understand, is that some places they ask you not to trespass on the burial grounds simply because the burial grounds are feeding new life, and mankind coming there tramples that new life, and that new life in hopes is to help produce and procreate all life, insects, bugs, animals, trees, fruits, grains, and then eventually that new life that their ancestors are feeding then ends up feeding the generations of the people left from the ancestors. I don't know how to say that politically correct. So it is totally cannibalism, and it's acceptable cannibalism. You are what you eat from your head to your feet, and you are where you came from, except for the last some odd 100 to 1,000. No, I don't remember how old embalming is exactly, but So, there's been that huge halt in the general process of how that happens. But, so, like, Jesus was really trying to tell a lot of people, if you pick up the Bible, and I'm not saying be this, be that, whatever, if you just want to try and follow the concept of what I was trying to bring forth concerning a few easy concepts of the self that you are in your body, that you are operating right now, listening or watching whatever it is that I may or may not be doing, or you may or may not be doing, or somebody may or may not have relayed this, or you may or may not already know this information. But if you don't, that's okay. It's cool. So I'll try and go over it again. The self is the operating self now, the one that's doing as you're doing. Hell, the self may be in the ILSE or the ALSE if you are Jesus. So you may be listening to me in one of these other forms. You may be the skin cell on somebody's desk, picking up the radio waves off the speaker, and be listening to me. That's like also considered, I believe, astro projecting or some shit. I don't remember, but there's a lot of terms for it. So we could go over those terms. I'm just trying to remember a lot of information off the top of my head, and bring it forth. But so there's like the eternal living self that is like out there, the immortal living self. Excuse me. The immortal living self that is out there being put into new life all over the planet and probably into the universe in its own weird degree, because stuff does come off of Earth and bounces off of Earth, and I'm sure like stuff gets through from Earth out some, I don't know, but so I'm sure that there's like some of your immortal living self out there too. But so there's that concept. So like, if you bleed into the ground and a tree grows, or if your toenail, makes it out into the whatever, and however, your skin cells, so on and so forth, hair follicles, So I'm not like saying going out there and like plant your DNA everywhere. That's probably a bad idea. Somebody will probably pick up on what you're doing and then like steal your shit and get you committed for a crime that they're actually committing. So be careful not to spread your DNA everywhere. Also too, if you believe in like certain things and you leave too much of your DNA everywhere, then people can hijack your signature, your code, and then that could be bad for you. But I don't know, maybe you want to delve into those mortal realms of the soul and da-da-da-da and have fun with all that, and hopefully you make it out. But then there is you are what you eat. So you're already cannibal. All right. So at some point, somewhere, I'm not exactly sure how far down the line that they're trying to say like advanced agriculture broke the line of like that form of cannibalism, but it still exists today because like there's a lot of gardens out there that are fertilized by certain companies, and those companies actually pick up human poop, and it's turned into a fertilizer base, and it's neutralized to the fact that like you can't pick up like certain toxins and shit, but like the DNA isn't like neutralized, because to neutralize the DNA would make the rest of the fertilizer based invalid and non-usable. So there's like a certain amount of DNA in it, right? And you grow your vegetables off of it, so you're eating like the town's worth of DNA, but that's okay. It's not bad for you. It's just like it is cannibalism. It is an acceptable form of understanding cannibalism and what all cannibalism means, because like cannibalism simply is like the consumption of mankind. It doesn't mean like in what form. It doesn't mean like I'm throwing you on the barbecue and like dashing you up with some Mrs. Dash salts and like we're going to like call George and Fred over for a barbecue, and like we're just gonna get down and like I don't know, have some like sex crazed drug party on your like barbecued steak ass. No, I'm not referring to that concept, but that concept still exists today too. So hold on just a second. How did I talk myself into making this video? I don't know. So like, you know, we have this concept that like, okay, so cannibalism still exists. The human consumption still exists. The human consumption factor is still there. It has been there since Abel, right? So like, what if you could, like, Jesus, and like tap into your ancestors? Wait a second, that sounds like something from like, you know, Moana or some shit, like some Islander stuff, right? We're not even gonna like go with the Native American Indians. We'll just go with the Islanders, right? So now we got like Moana going on. Well, I mean, if all of that ancestry is in your DNA, and that ancestry, that DNA is also present everywhere else, because, well, back then they buried bodies like reasonable folk and let that go back to feed the earth like reasonable folk, or they just kind of left the body there and whatever ate it, scavenged off of it and ate it. But somehow the frailty of man decided that that was something that they can't really see anymore. And I mean, I can understand. I've seen enough of what you would consider like, you know, gut wrenching shit to understand why most people wouldn't want their children to see it. And I mean, I'm not saying like go out there and show your kid all this fucked up shit. Please don't, because it's been too many generations since people could really mentally actually handle that. Like EMTs and police officers and warriors and, you know, all that stuff, they have to go through like extensive mental health stability training, because you can only handle so much, and sometimes one is enough. So don't go out there and try and experience horrific shit. You're not ready for it. Realistically, you need a lot of training. But you know, if you go back to that concept, like you know, many moons ago, people ate each other. People buried each other to produce new crops. People fed each other to their animals that they maintained. So like, here's the concept to understand. Like Columbus on his like freaking boat. Now I'm gonna fucking butcher building a boat here with a sail. Here, maybe if I build a sail. Oh fuck it, I'll leave the sail like that. Okay. You know, Columbus with his boat would take possums on him. There's a little curly cute possum hanging upside down. His little feet, little paws, his little like rat head, right? So they take possums on a boat, and specifically to eat the rats. Because if a rat got the plague, so here's his little curly cute tail and his little ratty ass, right? Ratty ass. And if he got the plague, right, and he bit a human, or if a human ate him, then and if a human ate him, he would get the plague and die, or some other foul shit that the rat had. But the cool thing is that they figured out is that the possum, right? The possum could eat the rat, okay? And then the possum was free of the bad stuff. And so, like, what they would do then is they would throw his ass up on him. What the fuck kind of a bone there? Okay, let's give it some dimension. They'd throw his ass up on the barbecue. The possum. Because the possum was free of all the bad stuff. And so, like, they would eat rat, like rat via possum. So like this is like, you know, Columbus and all of that, and other sailors and shit would do this all the time because like rats were a problem, and so was the plague on the boats. And so like, you know, if you take this concept right here, you know, and you move forward or backwards in time, whichever you want to go, if you want to move forward or backwards, and you think at one point like human domesticated animals, right? And little animal. Humans domesticated animals looks like a kid, but it's got antennae, so don't worry, it's not a kid. There's the antenna. Humans domesticated animals, and then would feed other humans to them, right? So, you know, here's the, oh, there we go. There kind of looks more like a T-bone steak right there, right? So, you know, humans would feed other humans to their animals to make their animals happy and, well, fat. Like, you know, so you had fat animals. No. From eating humans. So if like the population was like too big, like if there was like, you know, boom, 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 right? And they could only feed, you know, boom, and well, so many could kind of make it. They would starve a little bit, you know, but they would have to do something to fatten their animal reserves would have to be, you know, instead of being so like damn skinny, they would have to like fatten them up. Well, what was the best way to fatten them up? Well, you would feed these X'd off individuals to, well, some would go to these people, some would go to these. Oh yeah, so it was more like these guys were the X'd off ones, right? Because there's more of them in number. They would spare a couple of them, They would spare a couple of them. But these guys, they'd get fed dominantly to these guys. Because these guys, they wanted to be happy. So they wanted to eat. They didn't give a fuck what they're eating. They're eating, right? This is, you know, they're eating. They don't care. If there's something to spare for these guys, maybe so. But the rest, that was going to go fatten up their herd. We wanted fat, happy herd. You know, if T-Rex is out here, you know what I mean? With his monster jaws. And like, I got him captivated, and he's kind of looking a little skinny right now, right? He's gonna look a little skinny right now, right? I gotta fatten his fucking ass up before I kill him and eat him. Well, right now, best way to fatten his big old belly up is to feed him. Like, so if I got 3 T-Rexes, right, and these 3 T-Rexes is gonna feed the rest of my clan for like, you know, winter, and I already can't sustain 7 other individuals, and 4 are gonna have to go. But if those 4 go feed my T-Rex, and then I eat my T-Rex, and it feeds the rest of all of us, that's probably what happened. And in fact, there's like kind of other weird stories in history about stuff like this. So like, you know, you feed these guys to the T-Rex, right? And then the T-Rex, he goes back. This T-Rex, he goes back, right? These T-Rexes, they go back and they feed these guys, right? So now you got 4 times DNA T-Rex, right? 4 times DNA T-Rex, because you fed 4 individuals to your 3 T-Rexes. It says 4 times DNA T-Rex. And then, like, so you got 3 T-Rexes, right? So it's like you have this like interesting combination, like, of DNA sequence probability that just comes right off the bat. Like, that's not even with like really playing with like the math too much, right? You can come off with like all kinds of DNA, because like it's T-Rex with human DNA, right? So like whoever ate Rex also ate anti-whoever, right? So like, you know, you got T-Rex eating, you know, anti-Melissa, and then like, you know, you eat T-Rex Melissa, so you just ate your aunt, right? So like, you know, this cannibalism is like, I don't know how to spell cannibalism. How do I spell cannibalism? Oh yeah, A. I had to look this up. Cannibalism, like, kind of like it started at one point, right? And it has just perpetually, like, it comes across these occurrences, right, which causes cannibalism to like continue to this very day. And I think people are quite disgusted, certain people are quite disgusted when they started figuring this out, and they're like, we gotta stop this cannibalism, but there's no way you can get away from it, because like cannibalism will always exist. Now, cannibalism didn't exist before humans understood what cannibalism meant. And then when you truly understand what cannibalism means, then you realize that cannibalism has always been and always will be. But most people are referring to like eating the life form of flesh, when I believe Jesus, again, and I'm going back to Jesus on this matter, was trying to get B and C rated students to understand that, like, if you always were and always will be, then you can tap into a source of energy that exists on the plane while you're still alive, that is a part of the God source code, and you are allowed to in this living plane. And if you do start to understand concepts of like this, then you will be reaching certain lights and freedoms of such willingness to entertain and learn these concepts. Now, I'm not saying I'm any way somebody who is an authoritator on the matter, but it is one of these omni faith things that does connect all over the place. It connects with Jesus, it connects with African American, it connects with Native American, it connects with Chinese, it connects with like so many, but you have to understand and ascribe to this very, very dark concept of cannibalism. You know, if the first human, biblically, is that one L or two? Biblically, we'll spell it with two because it looks better. First biblically dead person in Genesis. Is Abel. So, you know, if you are as old as Abel and still mad about being butchered by your brother, you know, and your blood went and fed Mother Earth, you know, there's a interesting concept that could be entertained and grasped there, if not a really, really super intriguing movie. Oh man, that would be a fantastic movie. But if you just kind of think about, you know, okay, so you have this pre-existing cannibalism that's just innately encoded in you on so many levels and facets of this concept. And then you have like the after the animated living death of your body cannibalistic concept, and that branches off into its own various subsects. So you have the immortal living self, which is like the living reincarnated self, which is like this cannibalism of your living self, and then there is like the cannibalism of dead cells, cannibalism of living cells, cannibalism of there's just various forms of cannibalism, but it's not necessarily like you have to understand the cannibalistic concept to be able to like really grasp the immortal living self and the living reincarnated self, because once you can do that, then such things as like, well, what about Jesus's telepathy, what about Jesus's this, or what about this, or what about that? Well, if you can aspire to the fact that if anybody has ever consumed any part of you, or anything has ever consumed any part of you, then you have a connection of soul, right, that exists outside of just you are yourself and your own soul, but like you have a connection like that is ingrained into the encoding of the individual now. And so like whether that is on whichever level, especially like there are considerations that Jesus did have women in his life that he did have children by. Now that's a whole nother concept, right? Because then like there's another immortal self. That means Jesus is still living on like in a bunch of different forms, right? Because like if you think about it in this way, like let's go with the cannibalism of Jesus, right? So Jesus said something about like, you'll never accept this or understand this, but I want you to eat my physical self and drink my physical blood. And everybody's like, what the fuck? Da 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 da. Right? So like, what if like Jesus's blood, right, spills on the ground, right? And I mean, I'm gonna stay away from everybody else's traditional sense of cannibalism on this matter, because I mean, if you're really going to aspire to like godly things, and it's talking about so many different forms all at the same time, that I don't think you would have had enough time to get it all done in. You might still though, you never know. Alright, so like Jesus's blood spills on the ground, right? Bloop. We're gonna put a couple little droplets here. No, I'm not drawing gang signs. No, I'm not talking about how many people I killed, so you can kiss my ass, bluegrass. Alright, so this is just like Jesus' blood spilling onto the ground, creating this like pool of blood, right? And like the ground is like soaking it up like a sponge, right? So like we have like this sponge, right? Bloop, 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 bloop. Okay, so Jesus' blood is just being soaked up, right? And like there you go. So Jesus' blood is being soaked up, and like let's say like like later down the line, like we're gonna go. Whoop, there went my camera there. Yeah, this one's still working correctly. So let's go over here. Get that out of the camera for a second. Who cares? I don't care if that pin is in the camera. Alright, so like you got like later on down the line, right? And just for shits and giggles, we're gonna draw a pot. Okay? We're gonna say somebody collected some of this soil because maybe they understood what Jesus was saying, and so they put some of this Jesus soil in a pot, right? And like grew a tree, right? And let's say that tree grew and grew and grew, and like all of a sudden you have let's say we have a pear, right? But for some reason this Jesus plant decided to grow an apple. Oh, that is a horrible looking apple. Grew an apple, right? And then For some reason it grew a banana. Ooh. Right? You got this Jesus fruit tree. Right? And who knows what the fifth one is. But either way, it doesn't matter. Make up your own fifth or fourth one, excuse me. So like you have the Jesus plant here, and Jesus soil now because Jesus blood, right, soaked up in the ground like a sponge. So you decide to pick this fruit, right, and you put it in your basket. You put it in your basket and you take it to market, right? And people decide that they're going to go to market that day with their little bags, and they're going to buy Jesus fruit. Right? So, like, there's a simple explanation of, like, another form of Jesus's blood and reincarnation and consumed in that fashion that would be completely 100% acceptable. Maybe his meat was meant to go to, like, the wild animals, and you were supposed to then thusly, like, eat the kin of the wild animal. That's another concept, right? Live forever, right? But that goes against, like, orthodox methods or teachings or rabbi or something. It's just another understanding of this, like, live forever concept. But to understand it, though, to, like, truly say that you re-entered into human, you would have to be consumed by something that consumed you, and either that was a human eating you, i.e. back again for the teeth. Generally you have usually 4 teeth in the front of your head, and then you have these, like, very intricate style canines, and some people, like myself, have a series of 2, one slightly smaller than the other, and I'm not doing this canine drawing very good justice because I'm, like, trying to figure out how to curve the mouth at the same time, and it just came out horrible. But generally you have, like, these 4 front teeth, and then you have, like, these canines before the molars. And I mean, I've had conversations with dentists about this, that the concept that these teeth best fit for biting force, especially when you take in the fact that you have a bottom set too, right? So you have a bottom set too that come in, and I myself have 2 on the bottom again, and I just double checked to make sure. I used to have 2 on the bottom. I have 1 on one side and 2 on the other. I had to have 1 removed, but they bite down and perfectly fit another human. And most people have, like, sensitive feelings to this because it's unsociable, or it's unsocialized, or it's something. But it actually kind of makes valid sense, considering where we're supposed to have come from. You know what I mean? Like, we're supposed to have gone through this evolutionary tale, either biblically or otherwise. At some point, even if you just go evolutionary man and throw the Bible out and go caveman and so forth, and other weird stories that you'll hear out there of the evolution of humans, humans used to, in fact, actually eat one another and probably hunted each other all the time, quite a bit, and to the point that that trait of the teeth is still there. Even when you look at, like, some of the older skulls, it's still that jaw structure, the tooth structure, the canine structure fits best grappling other humans than it does other animals. Either small prey is too small, or you would be chasing after something that is incredibly hard to catch, like, I don't know, something the size of an Australian Shepherd, where you're like biting into the back of the thing. But even then, it doesn't make sense because the canines are not long enough to penetrate the pelt. So you still have to penetrate the pelt to get to the skin, to get to any vital maneuvers there. So when you take aside what you can bite, and then, well, how much that they can still defend against this, then you're kind of shit out of luck there, right? Because by the time you take into consideration anything that man can think of that was alive in that size that does actually fit kind of in that concept and where you would actually be biting from, then it takes away all of the hopeful alternatives to it being man, as many people like to be, because they would hate to have to say that humans are humans. Oh my god, it goes against my sensitivities. Oh my god, I just can't handle that concept. Oh, well, if you ever decide to go to Mars and run out of food, guess what's going to happen, folks? You're probably going to decide who looks best to eat first. That's all right. Don't be scared. God said survive at all costs. So, there is, again, that perpetual cannibalism. Now, here's a question, though. Like, if you are supposed to be, like, cautious about, what all that immortal self goes into, the living immortal self or dead immortal self goes into, there's been cautionary tales, and generally it's associated with which is easily entertained by demonic creatures. So, like, for instance, pig demons, right? We got the pigs, they're biblical, but these are different type of pigs than your ordinary pigs. So there's a lot of research people need to do on biblical pigs, because it's not your garden variety pig. And then, like, you have, other creatures out there that are easily possessed. Supposedly, snakes is supposed to be one. And it's questionable whether that is a good entity or a bad entity, or both, right? A lot of people like to portray it as bad, but there is a tale in the Bible that I really question the authenticity of it supposedly being bad. We'll get to that in another video. And then you have, like, animals, like domestic animals. So, like, I guess you gotta be kind of beware of domestic animals, because they could be good or bad. But there's that concept. So, like, the immortal self, the afterlife, immortal self, is is it better for a good person to potentially be immortalized into these animals as well? Well, why not, right? Why not? There was one question, though, about, like, animals that can so easily sustain demonic entities, like a capturing vessel, and then what happens to it afterwards. So this was like this kind of like perpetual demonic consumption of evil, right? So what does that mean? Well, that's like evil cannibalism, right? And, well, what is evil cannibalism? Well, evil cannibalism is the perpetual consumption of evil substance, right? And how does that work? Well, it works on the same principle as cannibalism that we've spoken of, but there's an evil essence to it. Now, well, isn't cannibalism evil? No, not as we were previously discussing. Why would it be? It's what got us to where we are now, so it can't inherently be evil. But evil, cannibalistic, perpetual consumption. All right, so there's a story about Jesus in the Bible, and there's familiar stories to this concept all over the world and all over many faiths, but this is the one that I can think of off the top of my head about evil cannibalism. So Jesus talks about, or tells this legion, the legion, that they are no longer going to have conversation. One, because they know who he is, which is an interesting concept to discuss at another time too, and two, that it's just been creating this ruckus all over the place. And legion means multiple, so we'll put like a bunch of little circles here to mean multiple. Like, there's 9 of them, right? Legion means multiple, right? Multiple in one human. So in this one human, there was a mass of other people, suggestively a multitude. Now we don't know if this legion was the entire horde or just a particular branch of the army. And he is talked to by the legion, and the legion says disperse us into these pigs, like into the pigs, right? And so now you have all this evil dumped into a pig, or into these pigs. So it may be 1 per pig, it may be like 5 per pig. We're not entirely sure of the grasp of that in its entirety. But you can create a vast many concepts in your mind about this concept, and this is where it gets scary, right? This is where a lot of people are like, oh my god, now I can't sleep, mommy, I need my covers, and then all the young women will be like, oh my god, I need somebody to comfort me, I can't believe this, does this really exist? Well, if the concept of animals breaking down and then dispersing into water, which is scientific, you can only put so many dead bodies in water before the water becomes toxic, right? But you could go down river a couple miles and still pick up pig parts as it breaks down, or fish that ate off the pig that have the pig DNA in them, and so on and so forth. And I was talking to a young man about this, and I asked him a question. I said, so what if you gave poison to a pig, and what would you have? And he said, poisonous pigs. I said, well, what if that poison was actually evil spirits? What if I shoved a bunch of evil spirits into a pig? What would you have? And he said, well, you'd have evil spirit pigs. Evil spirit pig blood. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. I guess. Right? So he's like little oinker here with his little oinky nose. Right? And his big round oinky face and oinky eyes, kind of floppy oinky ears, is now full of evil stuff. So we have evil pig, exactly what it is, right? Because you are what you eat, so you have evil pig. And I asked him, I said, do you know what happens to something when it dies? And so for instance, what would happen to a pig if it got thrown over in the river and nobody cleaned it up? And he's like, well, it's the same thing as if you put toxins in the water. Somebody's got to clean it up, otherwise it could become bad and people could get sick. And I was like, oh, but what if it broke down slow enough that people didn't get sick? And then he's like, well, you'd have pig water. I was like, oh, so I'd want to capture that water and put it in my fields to grow stuff, right? He's like, yeah, it'd be good stuff. And I was like, oh, well, remember those evil spirits I was talking about? What if we shoved those in the pig first and threw it in the water? And he's like, whoa, no. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, because you'd be feeding everybody evil pig water, and then everybody would be evil pig water people. And I was like, wait a second. Because I didn't think about, like, I hadn't really thought about, like, just being so easily fed to everybody. So, like, evil pigs, they go into, like, the drinking glass water, right? I was more along the lines of thinking of, like, farming aspect and shit. But he's like, no, man, if you feel like your glass up, like, 3/4 of the way full of this shit, then you got, like, this much evil pig water. And then you're drinking evil pig water. And I was like, well, is that why people put filters on their on their faucets? And he's like, yeah, man, you got to filter that shit out, right? No, I made that part up. That part I said myself. But you got to put these filters on to like filter out the evil pig water, right? And so that's why some people like have the water blessed. That's why it's like object of maintaining one's water is like important, not just on like a spiritual level, but like on the concept of like we really do understand what happens when you don't take care of stuff correctly, right? So like whether you're defending yourself from evil pigs, that's a horrible sink right there, like horrible sink with the filter on it. But if you're defending yourself from evil pigs and having your water blessed and having holy water made, or you're putting a filter on your tap because you don't know if a rodent fell into the city water pipe and died in there and nobody knew about it, cleaning and cleansing your water is important. So like, how did I just do this? So cleaning your water is important. And but like, so you could be still fighting off millennia or two worth of evil pig water, for all we know, and various other evil waters and stuff. Because like if you kill a bunch of bad guys in a river, like if there were like some orcs back in the days of dinosaurs and shit, and they all were like offed off by like the Hobbit, and they were all offed in the city water. Then you're drinking evil orc water, right? And that may cause a town to slowly and inevitably become more orc-ish. But then there's this like, remember, there's this self of you, and then there's like the dead self, and then the living self. And if you can interact with both sides while still being in the self, then well, that's probably one step closer. And I'm definitely going to put the lesser or greater than symbol over here, so Jesus is obviously greater. But that's one step closer to like that Jesus concept. But if you don't have people that have the concepts that Jesus inevitably and innately could understand, without a lot of today's technology and the ability for like the common folk to have the same access to world-renowned people that Jesus did, then yeah, it might be very different, and believe it or not, I do think I understand and do believe that Jesus did know personally some of the Sanhedrin Pharisee council members that were responsible for his crucifixion. And believe it or not, Paul is to have actually been one of those members. But we'll get to that in another video. But I just, when it was talking about, like this immortal nature and cannibalism, well, if you can't understand immortality and you can understand cannibalism, then you can understand immortality. If you can understand immortality, but you can't understand cannibalism, well, then now you can. Because honestly, if either one are to transpire, then the other transpires in some fashion, in some way. So the immortal cannibal, if you will, has been happening since the first human death. And again, through the Holy Bible, that is depicted to be Abel. So there you go, guys. It's an hour and 40 minutes, which is, wow, I didn't think I was going to spill that much stuff out on a live video. If any of this was entertaining, like, share, and subscribe. If any of it was not entertaining and you still want to yell, argue, or debate your side of it, I would love to hear it. Either way, have fun. Maybe this might have helped you mentally. Maybe this didn't. Maybe this allows you to find some sort of sense of sobriety. Maybe this doesn't. Maybe this brings you closer to your own faith or religion. Maybe this didn't. Either way, my name is Kevin Quinn Fuller, and I'm from Carbon Wrath on Instagram and a Dog Park Armies Bark Park on YouTube. Have a great day, folks. Bye-bye.